I'm Sean with League Estates, and today I wanted to go over title insurance. Why do you need title insurance, and what are the benefits, and what does it do? I'm going to be specifically talking about California in this case, but this pretty much applies to all the states. So if you'd like to know more, stay tuned. Okay, so what is title insurance? Well, when you go to buy a house, you want to make sure that the person that's selling it to you was the actual owner, that you're not just buying it from some random person who says they own the property, right? So that's its number one purpose, is to make sure that, you know, when you buy this house from John Smith, that it actually belonged to John Smith, that John Smith had the rights to own the property and to sell it to you, okay? So, and one way they determine that is they look at the history of all the transactions going back all the way to the Spanish land grants in the late 1700s and early and mid 1800s, before the United States took over California. So they actually can see the transactions all the way from then. You know, when the crown of Spain granted the land grants to the rancheros, to the ranchers, and they can look at that and hopefully trace it all the way till today. So if they can make that connection, then they know that, okay, we see that this person sold to this person, sold to this person, so it's a legitimate trail. Now there are some times that they can't make the connection, or they have to do more research to do the, to find that connection. But that's what title insurance is for. It ensures that there is that succession, that continuous succession, that it does belong to the person it says it belongs to. So you're not taking that risk, because in the past what would happen is, you would buy a house, and then a couple years later somebody come in and say, hey, that actually belongs to me. It never belonged to John Smith. How do you own the house? And then there'd be long, lengthy disputes, and the person might lose the house and lose everything they put into it because it's stolen property, essentially. So title insurance is pretty important for that, although that doesn't happen much anymore. Record keeping is pretty good. So it also does things like, say, easements, like power easements or mining rights, all kinds of easements that go on the property. It actually makes sure that they're legal, that they're allowed to have the easements, and lets you know about the easements. Maybe there's an easement that you didn't know about when you're buying the property. So there's a lot of other purposes for title insurance. So also liens on the property. So say someone paid a contractor to fix up the house before you bought it, and they didn't pay. Okay, so the title insurance covers those liens as well. So they're going to do research trying to find those liens before you buy the house, of course, and make sure that the previous owner pays off the liens that are owed. And another kind of lien can be, say, child support. If the previous owner owned child support, that child support can be a lien against the house and not just against the person. And there's all kinds of things like that where there can be a lien against the property and not the people. So the title insurance protects you from that. And it also protects you from judgments. So if John Smith got sued by, Harry, Sally, or whatever, then that lawsuit could be against the property, and they couldn't force the person to sell the property to pay the lien or to pay the judgment. But now that they're selling it to you, the judgment is still against the house. Okay, so you want to make sure all those judgments, liens are off the house, and the title insurance again protects you from that in case there's something that somebody missed that it didn't show up on the paperwork. So title insurance is pretty important. So now, how do you get title insurance? Well, when you're working with a realtor to buy a house, one of the things they'll go over with you is to get title insurance, and they'll put you in touch with the title company, right? And then you'll fill out paperwork like this, okay? And put all your information down, and then the property information. And they'll put out what's called a preliminary title report. So it's just a basic report that shows you what to expect. They haven't dug deep, so they haven't found the hidden things yet. But this is just to show you, okay, there's an easement on the property. Say in the backyard you had a power line that goes across, or you have a driveway that goes through your property to another driveway. Those kinds of things will be on the preliminary title report, or should be, if they're in the public record, if they're publicly available. So there's a whole list of things that will be in the preliminary title report, and here's an example of one. So, okay. Now after the preliminary title report, it'll actually give you the costs and things that you're going to pay for title insurance when you purchase the house. But in the end, you'll get a full title report, which will have everything that they found out. That'll prove that the house belonged to the previous owner and now belongs to you, and so forth. So now, other things that should be done in this process. One thing is when you need to sign your name, right? So often we run into problems where a customer lives in Beijing or Tokyo or something. They don't live here in California. The buyer doesn't, right? Or the seller doesn't. One or the other. So we need to have them sign paperwork. When you buy and sell houses, you have to sign with a notary. You have to make sure that the signature belongs to you. So again, the house doesn't get transferred to somebody that doesn't actually own it, or says that's not the actual owner that's on paper. So how do we do notaries when they live in another country, especially with COVID going on, right? So one way is you could do it through the embassy. Okay, so wherever there's a U.S. embassy, so we have, say, a customer that lives in Beijing, so they would go to the U.S. embassy and sign the paperwork there, and then that paperwork would be sent back by FedEx. So there's American notaries in the embassy to make sure that you are who you say you are. The problem with that is, say you live in rural China, right? You have to get on a plane and fly to where an embassy is, and that could be 500 miles or 1,000 miles. So it's not an easy thing to do, right? Plus you have to take time out of your schedule, you have to get a hotel, all that kind of stuff. So there is a new thing that's emerging, and that's called remote notary. Right? Now it's available or legal in 26 states, and Congress is trying to pass it so that it'll become legal throughout the United States. But it's still illegal in California, unfortunately. But there are some exceptions. So I know there are some overseas clients that were in the Philippines, I think. They, trying to sign for property, and they can't leave because of COVID. So there are some exceptions going on right now just because of COVID that they'll allow you to do remote notary. But in general, it's not legal in California yet. All right, so now let's talk about different types of title, different ways to own a house. Most people just own the house straight. So if you're John Smith, the title's under John Smith. Okay, that's pretty simple and straightforward. But there are issues with that. There are good sides to that and bad sides to that. One good side is that if you're the owner of the house and you sell it 3 or 4 years later and you make $250,000 profit, you don't have to pay any tax on it because that's deductible. It's $250,000 per person is the deduction as long as you've lived there 2 of the last 5 years. And if you're a married couple or a couple, then you get a $500,000 deduction. So you can make $500,000 in 2 years with your house and not pay any tax. So that's one of the big benefits of owning a house, especially in California or Irvine, where the prices just go up and up so quickly. So you can make a nice profit on your house before you sell it and buy another one somewhere else and keep that money. So that makes your primary residence a really good investment. Not only are you not having to pay rent, but the house itself, can accrue in value and you don't pay any tax on it. So that makes it a better investment than almost anything else on the market. But that's only for your primary house. That you can't include your vacation house or rentals or things like that. Now, one thing a lot of people do is they'll get a rental house, right, and a primary house, and they'll stay in the primary house for 2 or 3 years. They can sell that one, then they can move into the rental house, and as long as they live in their rental house for a couple of years, then they can turn around and sell that as their private home too, even if they've made a profit. So there's a lot of ways to work that, and that's a great angle for tax reasons. So now other things you can do with a house, you can put it in a trust. So instead of putting it under John Smith, you put it under John Smith Trust. Right? So John Smith still has control of that trust, but the nice thing about the trust is, say John Smith passes away or he's incapacitated, something happens to him, that trust can have his daughter or his son, on the title as well, or not in the title, but on the trust. So that trust just transfers from one family member to another, with no probate, court, no nothing. So it's a really easy way to transfer the property if something should happen to you. So a trust, that's the primary purpose of a trust is to pass on land without having to go through government probate and have it locked up for a year or more in those court proceedings. So now let's say you want to protect your property say you have multiple houses or businesses and things like that. You want to protect all those from lawsuits, right? You can't protect your house from a direct lawsuit, but you can protect all your other assets. So say someone comes and trips on your front doorstep and hurts themselves, right? And if you were dumb enough not to have insurance, which you should have insurance, then they can sue you. They can sue the house, the homeowner. So now, if the house is in is a corporation, an LLC, that means it's its own entity, right? So they trip on the steps of the house, they can sue the house. But they can't go sue your business and sue your other houses and sue your other property. So they can only go after the house. So that's why you want to put your house in a corporate trust, or sorry, in a corporation, is to protect liability. Especially if you have rental houses, you probably want to put them in some kind of LLC, so that each rental house is separate from the other rental houses, so nobody can sue and take all your houses. So you put them all in separate corporate bubbles, so to speak. Now, for your primary residence, the best thing to do is just have liability insurance. $100,000 or $300,000 liability insurance, so that if somebody trips on your front stairs, the insurance company pays for it. They don't come after you. Okay. Or if you have workmen come to your house and do work on your house, say they're working on the gutters. One thing we always make sure when we have workmen come on our properties that we're fixing up, we have them sign a waiver saying, you as the workman are responsible for yourself. That if you get hurt on the property, that it's covered under you. That you're not going to sue the owner of the house for hurting yourself. All right, which to me makes common sense. But if you don't have that paper, they can sue you or sue the owner for work that they've done if they've gotten hurt. So you want to make sure that any workman you have come in sign a waiver of liability, and also have the insurance just in case. Now, when you buy a house, let's say you have a name that is John Smith, right? Very common name. So what they'll have to do is they can't just go off of that name because it's so common, right? It could be, which John Smith is it? It's like when John Smith gets on an airplane and they say, oh, you're on the terrorist list because your name is John Smith and there's a John Smith on the list. Well, it's probably not the same John Smith, right? So they have to have a statement of info that goes in and has more information on who John Smith is, who this specific John Smith is, and that is not some other John Smith, right? So if you have a very common name, they'll have to do a little more paperwork than, say, someone that has an exotic name that there's only one of in the world, right? So the title company will have you fill that out. It'll be called a statement of information. Now, one thing about remote notary, it's only valid for American citizens. So if you're a foreigner, green card holder, you can't use that. You have to be an American citizen because then they can prove that your identity. So, but there are other methods, like I said, going to the embassy. If you're a foreigner or a green card holder, you can go to the embassy. So, but remote notary, so how they do remote notary is you'll get online with the notary, and you'll do a Skype session between the two of you, and the notary will ask you to log onto a website, and that website will ask you for your identity. And that can be done through a number of ways. One, through an ID, some kind of government ID, but they can also ask you a set of questions. Which street did you live on May 30th, 2002? And it'll list 3 or 4 addresses, and you got to click the right one. So it'll go through a bunch of questions like that just to confirm your identity, and then it confirms the notary's identity too. Make sure they've got his number and everything registered, and that so they need to know that both people are who they say they are. All right, and then DocuSign, you go through and you'll make a signature and you'll sign the documents and that kind of thing. So once both parties are proven and the documents are signed, then that's legal. Okay, so that's the new remote notary, how it's done. But like I said, it's not available in California yet. Okay, and that's it for a little brief overview of title insurance today. And I wanted to thank First American Title for giving me a bunch of information, sitting down with me and talking over everything. And a great company. We've worked with them for a lot of our transactions. They've been really smooth and easy. So I highly recommend working with them, especially when you work with us. So they also have a multicultural website that if you go to their website, you can click on the multicultural section, and it has multiple languages, and they've been individually translated. So they have Chinese, Japanese, English, Spanish. Whatever language you need is going to be on there, so you can understand all the documents and title insurance and everything in your own native language. So, and there's a link to that below here. Okay, and then here you see this is their website. Okay, and if you have any questions or you want to buy or sell property, of course, you can give us a call at 949-298-0727. Thank you, and have a great day.